Hello, dear listeners. If you are not a patron, then this is probably your first time seeing Dee's Journal, and if you are a patron, then this might be unusual for you to be seeing it in your podcatcher rather than on Patreon. So, a little bit of background here. Dee's Journal, it's usually a patrons-only thing. It's the in-character Dee narration bits just by themselves, and then at the end, there's a little bit of a director's commentary kind of thing. I go in and I talk about some of the things that are revealed in this episode, some of the thought process behind it, all that good stuff. Usually, it's just a patron perk, but we wanted, if you haven't listened to the Labyrinth episode yet, we wanted to kind of delve into this as an example of how to adapt the Labyrinth for an individual PC. We had the examples of Simba and Elsa and Van Richten in the Christmas Carol episode, but that one was short, and this one isn't.
It sure is.
Speaking of, Tom is here.
Hello.
Tom is not usually here for the Dee's Journal bits, but since, number one, he wrote most of Jareth's dialogue, and number two, this is probably going to be a longer Dee's Journal than usual because I'm going to be going a lot more into the meat of the episode and about the meat of what was happening to her and everything, and I'm going to feel really awkward if it's just me bloviating into a mic for 10 minutes straight. Like, I know that's what you guys are signed on for with Dee's Journal, but it feels weird to me, so I'm gonna be much happier.
Hopefully some funny banter
to bounce off of. So, yeah, again, this commentary is going to be a bit longer than usual, because again, we're going on point by point, and we recommend listening to the main episode at the very least before the commentary. If you want to listen to the journal part first, go ahead. But at the very least, we recommend listening to the main episode before the commentary because we're going to be referring back to it in there, assuming that you've listened to it, and it might be kind of confusing if you haven't listened to the episode yet. So, enjoy. We will see you at the end of this in either, 12 minutes or 3 hours. The Wonderful World of Darklords. Report 33. The Labyrinth. I wish someone would come and take this magic away. Right now. The moment those words left my mouth, I knew that uttering them was among the most rash and foolish things I had ever done. One should never make wishes idly, as it is impossible to know who may be listening. Perhaps I had been fortunate, and no one had heard my words. But my pack felt lighter, and when I opened it, I saw to my dismay that my Book of Shadows was gone. My hurried attempts to use Eldritch Sight and to cast a simple cantrip met with failure. It was as though I had tried to use magic before meeting my patron. I had not specified that I wished to be rid of my troublesome surges of wild magic. I simply wished to be rid of this magic, throwing the details on the mercy of whomever happened to hear. To my great misfortune, whomever happened to hear was the Goblin King, Jareth, who hid my magic away in the heart of his labyrinth with a promise. If I reached the center of the labyrinth in 13 hours, my magic would return to me. If not, I would be his creature forever. The Lord. As I stood at the edge of Paradise Falls, attempting to regain my bearings, a tremor shook the earth beneath my feet. I stepped back, alarmed, but the ground crumbled away and I was falling. But slowly, gently, as though I had cast Featherfall on myself, and the spectacular vista around me vanished into blackness. I landed on my hands and knees on hard, dry ground. Certainly not the lush jungle at the foot of Paradise Falls. As I tried to catch my breath, a black-gloved hand appeared in my field of vision. I took it, unthinking, and a tall and elegant figure pulled me to my feet. When I met his eerily mismatched eyes, I knew I was in the presence of Jareth, the Goblin King. I would later learn more about Jareth, that he was less than thrilled at having inherited his throne and chafed at the inane and tedious company of his subjects, that he believed he could bring any opponent to their knees with a stern glance and became as ill-tempered as a child in the face of resistance. That beneath his petulance was an air of desperation, a terror of being bested that went far beyond the desire to maintain face. The goblins would fawn at Jareth's feet no matter how he fared in any given conflict. He surely had no fear of losing their approval. Somehow, although he had not met me until that moment, Jareth craved my submission, specifically, and for its own sake. But at that moment, all I knew was that I was in the presence of the legendary Goblin King, a figure whom I had always assumed to be a mere bedtime story. I took in the scene around me, a desolate landscape of barren trees beneath a twilight sky, and in the distance, a sprawling labyrinth, and said an extraordinarily self-evident thing. This isn't Paradise Falls, is it? The Goblin King folded his arms, a smirk playing about his thin lips.
No. You know who I am. That means you know where you are, and you know why you're here. You asked for my help, and I gave it.
He flourished a crystal ball in one hand, and inside I could see a swirl of magical energy, one with the precise color and luminosity of my eldritch blast. I was so outraged that I could not speak, and Jareth needed no invitation to fill the silence. With a gesture, a door appeared, and through it I could see the trees and cottages of Salem.
Go home, Danielle. Forget all this. You no longer bear the burden of putting your life at risk to further the goals of a tyrant.
How terribly kind of you. I don't suppose you'll give it back if I ask nicely, will you? That little smirk played around his lips again, and he held out the crystal. I knew he would not give it to me, yet I could not help but reach for it. Just before my fingertips could brush it, it popped like a soap bubble.
What's said is said. You wished your magic away. I took it. What's that if not kindness? If you want it back, it's there.
He pointed to the labyrinth and the castle at its center.
But beware. Do you really think you're any kind of match for me? You'll be alone in this, Danielle. Aslan can't help you here.
That cruel knife twist of his mouth again, as a clock appeared beside him.
There's only one king in the labyrinth.
The land. The labyrinth follows a logic more akin to tales of the Feywild than to our own world. Walls shift when one's back is turned. A door that leads to a forest when pulled might open to a hedge maze when pushed. A journey through a subterranean cavern ends atop a hill beneath open sky, even though the cavern never once sloped upwards. Another feature of the labyrinth, perhaps even stranger, was how familiar everything seemed. There was nothing so prosaic as entering a maze that looked precisely like the halls of the beast's castle, or encountering a talking cat. Nonetheless, everything seemed jumbled together from images and ideas that existed in my own mind, like some kind of dream. It was spring when I left Paradise Falls, yet the labyrinth was in the full glory of autumn, with brilliantly colored trees, crisp breezes, and air that smelled of apples and wood smoke. I am sure that I need not tell my patron why autumn looms large in my mind. The forest through which I traveled was not the Sieni, nor Mononoke Forest, nor Sherwood, but the looming trees and the sense of being watched reminded me of all three. The same held true for the people I encountered. I did not recognize anyone within the labyrinth, yet I had the strange feeling that I had met all of them before. The soft-spoken red and green clockwork golem, the talking badger in a cleric's habit, the young woman made of stardust. The only exception, the time when I could clearly recognize people and places from my own life, was when I took a bite from an apple but I can scarcely recall that now, as though it were a dream that dissolved upon waking. Curiously, I found that each segment of the labyrinth had its own distinctive character and challenges. The red and orange firefly-like insects that beset my companions and me along the shoreline, attempting to persuade me to save my own skin and leave my companions for dead, did not follow us into any other area of the labyrinth. Nor did the trio of tiny masked goblins in the black and angular maze who attempted to push me into a sack and take me back to the beginning. Residents of the labyrinth were aware of certain universal areas, to be sure. The castle, the goblin city, the bog of eternal stench, but they had little knowledge or curiosity about anything beyond their doorsteps. It was as though each area of the labyrinth were its own separate dream that did not bleed into the dreams before and after it. Dread possibilities. Eventually, I made my way to the Goblin City, which looked like nothing so much as a quaint fairy tale village gone to seed. All the tricks and illusions of the Labyrinth were gone now. Jareth was relying on brute force, sending wave after wave of goblins after me in an attempt to beat me into submission. I was able to get past them with the help of the companions I had met, and I entered the castle to find an empty throne room. And beyond it, a room made of dizzying stairways, where it was impossible to tell up from down, from left from right. Jareth strode along the walls and the undersides of floors as though gravity itself bent to his whims, while I was still at the mercy of the laws of nature. Sitting on a stairway far below me was my Book of Shadows. I had no time for this. I leapt into the void, toward the book, and once again found myself falling with agonizing slowness, as though I had cast Featherfall into a crumbling room that floated in the void. In the center of the room, looking haggard and dressed in a robe of white feathers, was Jareth. I did it. I solved your labyrinth. I found the center. Give me my magic.
Why? So you can go back to scratching for his approval and a few crumbs of his power? He doesn't care about you. You're a pawn to be sacrificed for an interesting magic item. And once he's thrown you aside, will he even remember your name?
I tried not to let the words sting. You think his high opinion matters to me? That I expect him to pat me on the head, perhaps to give me candies for a job well done? Spare me, Jareth. My bluster did not have the effect I intended. Instead, some of the weariness vanished from Jareth's face. His eyes grew clearer, and he began to advance on me, no longer shrinking back from my approach.
You are nothing to him. You don't matter. No one does. There's only one person Aslan has ever loved, and he died a long time ago. But you matter to me. You're the most important person in my world. Stay here with me, and I will cherish you forever. Do you want magic? I'll give you the power to shape the labyrinth to your whim. Do you want to be safe? Nothing enters these walls unless I will it. Everything you want is here with me.
I hesitated. I had no desire to stay, to abandon my family to whatever fate might befall them without my help. Beyond that, beneath the romanticism that even he seemed to believe, Jareth was as much a beautiful predator as the owl whose feathers he wore. I was certain that if I stayed in the labyrinth, things would not be as idyllic as the picture he painted. And yet, I could see a grain of truth in his words. Despite my bravado that had only strengthened him, I do wonder what ultimate purpose I am furthering in this endeavor. And sometimes I fear... Seeing my hesitation, Jareth pressed forward.
I'll be your patron. I'll be your older brother. I'll be anything you need me to be. Just surrender.
I took a deep breath. You're right. If I stayed here, you would hold me securely, and you would never let me go. I could see the beginnings of a smile on his face. As securely as a little girl tied to a chair. Now give me my God's-damned magic back! Jareth's smile faltered, and the labyrinth crumbled into nothing around me. I found myself standing once again atop Paradise Falls, my Book of Shadows at my feet, and the mournful cries of an owl in my ears. Parting thoughts. Please, Yensid, do not lecture me on the foolishness of my wish. Should you ever have the misfortune of smelling the bug of eternal stench, you will agree that I have received punishment enough. Nothing has triggered my wild magic as of yet, but I can feel in my bones that it is here. Despite the troubles it caused me in Paradise Falls, I no longer wish to be rid of it. It is mine, and mine only. There is something to be said for that. Holding a dagger as a mist talisman, I prepared for the next leg of my journey, but I hesitated for one final moment, listening to the last echoes of the owl's cry on the cliffs. I could have stayed, I know. I could have lived in a pretty dollhouse built of my own dreams. But what would it cost? Everything. Regards, D.
I will not chastise you, Danielle. Even a tyrant such as I have spoken the deepest desires of my heart aloud, much to my own regret. Such desperation is what sets us apart from entities such as Jareth, who cannot comprehend the tenacious dreams of another. He expects capitulation, and any resistance befuddles and frustrates him. He is nothing more than a child, wielding the power of a king, the king of the land of empty desires. You have done well to take back what was stolen from you. Many others have failed in their endeavors to solve the Goblin King's labyrinth. Jareth should have recognized the foolishness in attempting to play his games against my little obstinate servant. But perhaps I give him too much credit. After all, he is not entirely his own creature, and he shall never allow himself to be. I shall respect your decision to maintain the wild magic infection you develop after the events in San Francisco, and will monitor your progress. The effects upon your person may provide valuable data on the use of such unstable magic. And of course, should you need me, I will extract it with ease.
This has been The Wonderful World of Darklords. We have no affiliation with Disney or Wizards of the Coast. All music recordings used in this episode are in the public domain and were obtained through museopen.org. Titles and links are in the show notes. Dialogue for Yensid was written by Aslan Rex himself, who you can follow on Tumblr at Darklord Aslan. The Wonderful World of Darklords logo was designed by Haylight Jones. You can find links to their work in the show notes. If you'd like to support the show, look for us on patreon.com or find our tip jar on Red Circle. Thanks for listening. Hello, dear listeners. So yes, here we are for the commentary proper, and again, if you just listened to the D-bits to find out what happens to our girl and then, came here, you might want to go back and listen to the episode before getting into this part, because otherwise it might be kind of confusing. Also, if this is your first episode... Wow, okay.
Hello. First, hello. Welcome.
Yeah.
Listen to the others.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if this is one of those where it might actually be your first episode, because you might have been like, oh yeah, Labyrinth. Jareth is a Dark Lord, yeah! And if that's the case, then it's going to be important to know going into this that Dee is an adult version of Danny Dennison from Hocus Pocus. So that's going to be informing a lot of what she goes through when she goes into the Labyrinth.
If you are listening for the first time, which as we mentioned is probable, a bunch of stuff probably started making sense.
Yeah. Also, real quick, before we get into this, I wanted to let the patrons know right away what's going to be going on for them, because I know, on the one hand, there's the part that's like, oh good, yay, this wonderful thing gets shared with everyone. On the other hand, there's this part that's like, what am I paying $2 a month for then?
I'll tell you what.
Yeah, yes, we will tell you what. So, I am working on a full-length account of what Dee went through in the Labyrinth, including that World Falls Down sequence that we teased, and that's going to go up on the Patreon. So, patrons, that's almost certainly isn't up yet, but that will hopefully be up before the end of April, and unless something ridiculous happens, it'll definitely be up before the May episode.
So, if you are here just because you love Labyrinth, and this is your introduction, we have just dangled out the possibility of getting our version of a World Falls Down sequence. You know what to do.
And if you're a big fan of Labyrinth, the chances are you're also of an age to be a fan of Hocus Pocus, too. And it's a world full sound sequence between Jareth and adult Danny Dennison. So, enjoy. So, before we go in and talk about the things that Dee encountered in the Labyrinth, we're going to talk about kind of the lesson that Dee needed to learn here. Because, Sarah needed to outgrow her selfishness and her childishness. That's obviously not what Dee needs to outgrow. So what does Dee need to learn?
If you took our advice and listened to the episode, you know that we've talked about how with this, you're kind of having to design the Labyrinth around your sort of Sarah keystone PC or NPC. Mm-hmm. So this is what we had to do.
Yeah.
And just so you understand that we understand how unhelpful that is. Yeah. We went through that same process here with Danny from Hocus Pocus.
We absolutely did, yes.
And we started with was, like Rachel mentioned, what's the lesson she needs to learn?
Yeah.
And that so much was going to come out of that.
And that was your big contribution here, was with the lesson she needed to learn, was you pointed out, well, she wished away her wild magic, and what does that represent? Mm-hmm. What does that mean? So we kind of went in and broke down, okay, what does that mean? And again, it's operating on a couple different levels here. There's one level where, wild magic is inherently chaotic, and, Azalin is lawful evil. Danny Dennison from Hocus Pocus is chaotic good, shockingly enough. So if she's wishing away this wild magic in favor of Azalin's magic, if she's saying, well, I'm going to keep being Azalin's warlock, but this wild magic has got to go, then she's kind of embracing this thing that's the opposite of her and wishing away this thing that's closer to who she is. And that's a form of self-abnegation. On a couple different psychological levels, that is not a great choice for her to be making if she's being her authentic self. But even more than that, and I think this was the key. This was your big thing, yeah. So if you want to take this away.
So a big part of this is we're kind of having to think of a couple of levels. There's the what does the wish represent for her? So what lesson does she need to learn? It needs to represent some kind of growth that she needs. And also then sort of how's Jareth going to engage with it?
Yeah.
So you kind of have to think through all those. And so the wild magic, that's her own magic. Warlock magic is from Aslan. It's with strings. It's a gift from him. It's some of his power shared with her. And we're thinking about sort of how does Jareth engage with this? What's he going to offer? What's he going to tempt her with? With Sarah, it was the whole, stay in your room, play with your toys, play with your costumes, be this sort of self-centered little girl forever. That's not Danny, obviously. That's not Dee. So what is he going to sort of tempt her with? And there's always, we've hit a couple of times the idea of that she's so motivated by fear. Mm-hmm. But we didn't want to hit that again. It didn't feel quite right. And that didn't tie into this. Wishing away her magic, seemed almost the opposite of that. Mm-hmm. So with this whole wishing away the wild magic, this idea that she feels fundamentally helpless. She does not believe in her own power. Yeah,
that it actually, you said that we weren't touching on her being motivated by fear in this one, but in some ways we are, just from a different angle. Because, as much as she rails against that image of herself as the little girl tied to a chair, part of her has never gotten out of that chair. Man alive, our girl needs therapy so bad. But part of her will always feel like she is that little girl tied to a chair. And, when she got out of it, she didn't get out of it herself. She had to be rescued. And actually, I was going back and thinking about it, and it's easy to forget because she is so scrappy and tough and sassy. But Danny never once saves herself in the entire movie. Yeah. So, it's always Max saving. Even when, they first summon the Sanderson sisters, she tries to trick them. But they see right through it, and they get her, and, she hits them with her candy bag and everything. But Max is still ultimately the one who does the burning rain of death and gets them out of there. Mm-hmm. So, she is never able to save herself, and part of her believes she never will be able to save herself. And, if this wild magic is her magic, then clearly it can't be any good and can't be able to save her because she can't save herself. And I don't remember which of us first referenced The Last Jedi.
I feel like it was me.
Yeah,
my brain tends to turn to Star Wars more than yours.
Your brain tends to turn to Star Wars, but I love The Last Jedi. Yeah. So but I think it was you.
So just that you have Rey's big character flaw, the big lesson she needs to learn in The Last Jedi, which exists, is that she doesn't think she's important. She doesn't think she's the main character of the story. She keeps denying she's the main character of the story. She's like, I need to get Luke Skywalker to come back and save the day. Then it's like, oh, I'm going to go to Kylo Ren and I'm going to turn him to the light and then he's going to save the day.
Yeah.
My job is to sort of be the intermediary to the Skywalker who is actually going to come in and save the day.
Yeah.
And so that's where Dani is.
Yeah, she's not quite there exactly of the not thinking she's the main character, because Dani has big main character energy. But in her heart, Rey is constantly looking for a man to tell her what to do. Even though she's sassing Luke and everything, she still ultimately thinks that he's the main character. And that's kind of where Dani is, even, that she's sassing Aslan 24/7. But at the end of the day, she is looking for a big brother to tell her what to do. And, she's kind of slotting Aslan into that role, which is great. There's nothing wrong with putting Aslan Rex into your big brother role. This is fine.
That's going to work great for them. And speaking of that, she's looking for someone to sort of be her protector and her savior and tell her what to do. That's then how we can bring Jareth in.
Yes, that Jareth is going to be like, all right, here, I'll be your patron.
I know what to do with this.
I'll be your older brother. I'll be anything you want. That line was so hot.
Why, thank you.
No, don't be her older brother. That goes against the laws of God and man. So in the end, when she has that line about how the wild magic is hers and she's going to keep it, that is a huge step for her. That's that's on par with Sarah putting away the pictures and giving Lancelot to Toby.
Yeah, exactly. It's the specific, tangible sign of how they've grown. A specific, tangible sign they've learned their lesson. And it even isn't just like, oh, I shouldn't have said that so I don't lose my good warlock magic. It's that whole, she not only gets her warlock magic back, she fully comes to accept the wild magic as this important part of her own personal power. So that's the lesson that we needed her to learn. So let's go through now and break down all the things that happened to get her there. And once again, we're not doing a Simba and an Elsa and a Van Richten. I'm sorry, this is all you get. So we're going to be going into pretty exhaustive detail here. So first off, we're going back to the beginning of this to kind of go through point by point together. And I just need to say for the record that Tom read this and declared it to be the thirstiest thing I have ever written. And that includes, I have written fiction specifically for Chris Newton's Vampire Smooching podcast. So when she's first talking to Jareth and they're doing the whole, he's challenging her to go into the labyrinth and everything, the big thing that I see to talk about here is when he has the door appear and through it she can see Salem, and that's kind of his first temptation to her, is coming to her kind of on the level of, you can be done with Aslan, you've been having this kind of moral dilemma about Aslan, it can be done, you can go home. And of course if she goes through that door, then she's going to, be walking into a bubble where he's going to be doing that's a trash lady room.
Yeah, her world falls down bubble, yeah. And of course she turns that down because nobody ever says yes to Jareth's first
and the movie would be over.
And the movie would be over.
I remember you had the line, no longer bear the burden of putting your life at risk to further the goals of a tyrant. And I think that was a cool, also as we were sort of first talking through this scene, it was a hard one because, we were like, this scene is going to set the framework that all of the other scenes and the whole other Labyrinth story comes out of. And that was a critical line of the sort of specifically hitting her uncertainties about Aslan we've been building up a little bit. And also just this idea of one of those temptations is that maybe legitimate, this might not be a good thing for you to do. Yeah.
Or even because we were struggling with the dialogue in this one a little bit. It got much easier when we got to that final within you scene where she's talking to Owl Jareth. But we were struggling with this one a little bit because we're he's not going to be coming on really strong at first. Just like he didn't come to Sarah originally with Fear Me, Love Me, Do as a Child, Your Slave. He's not going to be coming to Dani with, how about I be your patron instead of Aslan to begin with. He's going to be coming at her with something else. And I think that actually is going to be an important thing for you as a DM. This is why you're here, the tools in your toolbox.
I know you just like talking about Labyrinth.
Yeah. That, whatever he does to begin with, he's not going to be coming on as strong. He knows that he doesn't have enough cards in his deck to play them all at first, and he'll be going for a little bit more of a subtle angle to begin with.
And I know it was we have the whole you wished your magic away, I gave you what you wanted, but you also have this whole, part of why the dialogue's tricky, you want to sound like Jareth from Labyrinth, but he's not going to be coming on nearly as overwhelming, as forceful as he is with Sarah.
Yeah.
Because with Sarah, it's the sort of like, he is just so much a like mightier adult, intimidating figure. Like, she's a kind of frightened of him when she first meets him. That's not this. Like, Danny isn't going to be frightened of him and just trying to sort of overawe her is not going to do that either. So it's like, what's the initial tack he's going to take?
She doesn't cower before him, so he's not frightening.
Exactly. So that initial tack of, like, you don't have to be his pawn anymore. And it can't be that whole, don't defy me, don't test me. It can't be like you're straightforward, don't defy me. You'd be like, no, I'm too much for you. I'm like too powerful. You're just a little girl kind of thing. So then I think it was you had the Aslan can't help you here. Like, that's really trying to play up that sense of insecurity, that sense of, I can't do this on my own. I need a big brother to protect me.
Yeah.
And my big brother's not here.
Or even when we were struggling with the dialogue, and I was thinking through some of Jareth's original dialogue, and he's not going to do the don't defy me, but he can totally do the you're no match for me. And he does. Yes. Because that's part of her insecurity, is believing that she's no match for him without Aslan. And so again, these are some, he's not going to be coming on at your PCs full don't defy me mode because they're PCs.
Right, they defy people.
Danny has big PC energy. This is very, I feel like this is going to be very instructive for how to do it with PCs, because like they're also not going to be cowed by Jareth. They're not going to cower, so he won't be frightening. So he's going to be coming at with these more subtle tacks.
And the nice thing is, even in universe, there's a reason for you to be like tailoring this. The idea that if they're in the labyrinth, he is connected to their minds and their thoughts and their memories. So he would kind of know the tack.
Yeah. So that is what we had with the Lord. Now, the land is where things get real nuts. You want to get nuts?
Let's get nuts.
So the land is where we get into the really, like, weird dream imagery. And when we were talking this over, we both agreed, like, we didn't want to have any distinctively hocus-pocus imagery.
Yeah.
Because we talked about, like, wanting the imagery to be subtle. And when we were talking about it in terms of a PC group, more subtle stuff would be stuff from their backstory, like imagery from their backstory, because that would be stuff that they hadn't interacted with within the game itself. It would feel more abstract. But with Dee, like, all of her trauma, all of the stuff from Hocus Pocus has come up multiple times within the show itself, and it looms so large in her mind. Like, she undoubtedly still has nightmares about this. And so if we're going for the more subtle thing, it's actually kind of the opposite. It's going to be stuff from the show, from things that she's, undergone in the past 3 years or so. It was helpful that, in Christmas Carol, she was having the dream sequence that Marley broke in on, and it was, she's in holes, and then suddenly she's inspirited away. It's like, okay, that's what her dreams are looking like right now. So we can work with that. So when she's describing all of the like Feywild logic of the door that leads to a forest when pulled, opening to a hedge mage when pushed, that was just kind of like general stuff.
Labyrinth stuff.
Yeah, Labyrinth stuff. I tried to make sure that everything was either labyrinthy or from her memory. So like the bit about subterranean caves is from Atlantis, the Underdark. But everything else is, it's a hedge mage, it's a forest.
Right.
And then she starts talking about the autumn imagery. As she says, Cienza, that should be obvious.
That was our way of also trying to differentiate a little bit from Labyrinth. To be like, we want something that feels like it could be in Labyrinth, but we're not just doing Labyrinth. We're not just like, it's the hedge maze with the Ludo, and it's the tunnels with the David Bowie face rocks, and it's the helping hands, and like, we want it to be like, that could be something in Labyrinth.
Yeah.
But it's not something we really see in Labyrinth. It's like very autumnal theme.
Yeah. And like her version of the forest, that Sarah encounters the Fires in, has much bigger, more looming trees. Because the forests she's been through recently are Mononoke Forest, the Sienni, and Sherwood, which are freaking huge.
Yeah.
So,
big primordial forests.
Yes. So that's all. If she ran into the Fires, and I haven't decided yet whether or not she has, I haven't gotten to that part, but if she ran into the Fires, that's where. Then we get to the NPCs. The setting stuff for me was the easiest part. I don't know if that's also going to be the easiest part for you. But for me, the setting stuff was the easiest because it was just kind of bringing in imagery from all the places that I've already been writing about. With the NPCs, it was a matter of going through and picking the ones that are relating to this conflict that she's having, that are relating to this feeling that she can't do things by herself, and even her insecurity with Aslan as her patron. And I was going through this on easy mode because as I was thinking about the possibility of having Friar Tuck, Tom pointed out
that he could be a badger in a cleric robe. Like, we could do the reference. He could be a talking badger.
Because in Robin Hood, he's just a dude. In our Robin episode, everybody's just dudes. So
maybe he's aware badger. We haven't decided.
But he could be a badger in a cleric robe, or like
boom,
Vision.
Easter egg.
Yes, Vision was just a Warforged in our WandaVision episode, and here we specifically have him as this red and green clockwork golem. So the listener knows, like, oh yeah, it's Vision, but like the red and green honestly doesn't mean anything to D. But the reason that I went with Vision and Friar Tuck and the woman made of starlight was Asha.
From Wish.
From Wish.
From Disney's Wish, which we all loved and enjoyed.
I mean, nobody's watched Wish, but it actually is one of our more listened to episodes.
Yes.
Because I think there's a level of we watched Wish, so you don't have to do that. I feel very silly that Asha was in this, but there you have it.
You know, it fits the...
It does. So with Vision, it was when she was in WandaVision. If you haven't listened to that episode yet,
it's great.
She got Westviewed. She got Monica Rambeau'd, and she had a moment where she was able to break Wanda's control because Wanda was distracted, and she was able to shout to Vision for help, let him know that Wanda was doing something wrong, and Wanda got super cheesed, and just... There was a wild magic surge, and between the wild magic surge and Wanda being cheesed at her, she got pushed out of Westview. So it's this idea that she saved herself there. Even though she was calling for Vision's help, like, it was still, she was the one who was able to regain control and draw Vision's attention to this. So that's a very important thing for this arc that she's having. And then with Friar Tuck, it was a similar kind of thing. It wasn't that she saved herself, but it was that she befriended him and earned his trust. And that was the way that she was able to talk to the Merry Men, was because she earned Friar Tuck's trust. And even though she'd been seen talking to some of Prince John's soldiers, he still took her to meet the Merry Men because of the relationship that they had together. And that, again, she did that without Aslan. There was no magic involved in that. That was all her. And then with Asha, she found out in Wish that Asha was a warlock. And because if you haven't listened to that episode, she's a warlock for the Star. And it was kind of a blend of, like, she's kind of jealous of Asha because Asha is a warlock who's working against this lawful evil tyrant. So Dee's kind of like, oh man.
Boy, that'd be nice.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Must be nice.
So there's a little bit of that going on, and there's also, again, she used Eldritch Sight to find that out and everything, but then the Eldritch Sight actually, ran Asha off because she didn't want to be discovered. So there was well, maybe if I hadn't used magic, I actually would have been able to make more inroads with her. So there's a couple things subconsciously going on with Asha for her, but that was why she was the third person.
So this is good GM guidance. If you're like, okay, of the many NPCs they encountered, as Dee has encountered many NPCs, how do I pick which ones are going to be badgers, talking badgers? And that whole thinking about which ones connect to that core dilemma.
Yeah.
And then similarly, I think the sort of encounters you mentioned are like a fantastic example of how to do, once again, to do a Labyrinth adventure, you do an adventure in Labyrinth. Good luck. Like, when we say it needs to have a kind of lesson, it needs to be these moments of growth and realization, these are some great examples.
Yeah. This was the hardest part for me. I don't know how it's going to be for you, dear listeners, if you're going to run a Labyrinth thing. The setting was the easiest because it's just set dressing. The NPCs were a little harder, but that was actually super fun. Once I figured out who was who, deciding, okay, this is what Vision's going to be like in the Labyrinth, this is what Friar Tuck's going to be like in the Labyrinth, this is what Asha's going to be like in the Labyrinth was super fun. But coming up with the encounters was me staring at my screen for a while, trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And I knew what imagery I wanted to have, but I didn't know where I wanted it to go. And ultimately what I went with, there were the red and orange firefly-like insects that beset her companions and her along a shoreline, attempting to persuade her to save her own skin and leave her companions for dead. I knew I wanted to have her go up against red and orange firefly-like insects, because originally the third companion instead of Asha was going to be that program that she befriended in Tron.
Woo!
Because that's another one she befriended without magic. But I couldn't figure out a way to describe her in a way that you would hear the description and say, oh my gosh, it's the person from Tron. Especially because I was thinking of her as being a blue firefly who at some point gets attacked by red and orange fireflies and turns red. So, unless you're like a hardcore Tron fan, you hear blue turning to red or orange and go, aha!
Right, like, it's really hard to describe, like, Tron aesthetic without being like in Tron.
Yeah. It's hard
She had glowing outline blue clothes, like in
like
Tron.
in Tron. It's hard to describe Tron aesthetic in Jim Henson aesthetic.
Yes. Imagine a Muppet with blue outline clothes, like in Tron.
But I wanted to, like, kind of hold on to that image. I wanted to have the image of... I thought the image of the red and orange fireflies that attack them is creepy. So I had it be that these red and orange fireflies are attacking them on the shoreline. And I thought, okay, well, if it's Tron, if I'm bringing in this Tron imagery, what's the thing that's kind of sticking with Dee from Tron? And I think the thing that's most haunting her is the knowledge that this program who helped her almost certainly got captured and reprogrammed by Clue and is now his brainwashed slave, and there's no way to save her. And this is, as a chaotic good person, this haunts Dee. So it's okay, so it's going to be something with that. And then I remember on the Discord, a lot of people were like, dang, that is ice cold in Pirates of the Caribbean when she, did hypnotic pattern on Mary Read so that she couldn't save her girlfriend. So I was thinking about that, and that Dee has had a couple times where she's thrown people under a bus, either to save herself or for her own convenience. And she did not throw the program from Tron under the bus. Like, Dee, stop blaming yourself for that, honey. It wasn't your fault. You weren't there when it happened. Mary Read was totally your fault. So it's like, okay, that can be the lesson she learns. And that's why I was on a shoreline. I wanted to bring in some nautical imagery to evoke Mary Read. And I'm imagining probably when you get the full write-up, it's going to be something with the red and orange fireflies or, like, attacking them. And maybe, since Asha's a woman made of starlight, maybe they're turning her light red or orange. And, like, but they're not going after Dee. And so Dee could totally run off and leave Asha for dead and save herself, but she doesn't.
And the nice thing is by mixing a couple different things together, it's not that Wizard of Oz analog. It's not like, it's her, the farmhand, in a scarecrow costume. And also, like, that gives you, like, a paint set to build this scene. And even if your PCs don't pick up all of the references, it makes the scene distinctive.
Yeah.
So, look, I didn't, when I first read this, I picked up the Tron imagery. Shocking. I know. I'll give you a moment to collect your breath and remove your jaws from the floor. But I didn't make that connection with the shoreline because of Mary Read. I was thinking it was a Tron reference.
Did you think it was the sea of whatever?
I was thinking it's because they have a border, like, because of borderland,
okay,
like land and sea. But so, and I can see the Mary Read, like, oh, yeah, I get it. But even though I didn't pick up that Mary Read reference, that Pirates of the Caribbean reference, it made the scene distinctive. So, like, just taking these bits and pieces and mixing them together, even if me, in this example, and your PC, don't pick up, oh, it's this because it's a reference to that pirate adventure we had. It makes the scene distinctive.
Yeah. And then, a much more obvious is the trio of tiny masked goblins in the black and angular maze who attempted to push her into a sack and take her back to the beginning. If you've listened to the Nightmare Before Christmas episode...
Trick or treat.
Yes, she got Santa Claus by Lock, Shock, and Barrel.
If you haven't, good incentive.
And they straight up caught her. She couldn't escape, and this is going to be her opportunity to escape. And I haven't written the scene yet, but that's what's going to happen in the full write-up, is she is going to be able to escape Lock, Shock, and Barrel on her own. But at the same time, that is still evoking everything that happened when she was able to escape, because she did use invisibility to help her escape, because she's Dee. That's like invisibility catches form and Eldritch Sight.
Form of Dread.
Form of Dread. Eldritch Blast. Anytime she does one of the... Drinking games that will kill you without conclusion. But she was able to escape them through distraction and cleverness. So this is kind of her opportunity to both go back to that place where she felt helpless and defeat it, and to remind herself that she wasn't actually helpless. That said, again, the encounters were the hardest part. I'm going to be talking about encounters a little more in the full write-up when it drops. So if, patrons, look forward to that. Because Tom can testify, because I had to bounce it off him. The encounter where she meets Friar Tuck was making me pull my hair out.
Yeah.
But so figuring out how to work in that imagery and those lessons and everything is tricky, but it can be as straightforward as your PC tends to feel helpless, so here's a situation where they have to save themselves. your PC is greedy, so here's a situation where everybody is sinking in quicksand and there's like gold somewhere else and they have like it can be something as on the nose as that and it's fine.
And you get a little of that in Labyrinth, so it's not out of keeping with
with
the source material. It'll feel Labyrinth. You need something like that.
So then we get to the post within you, her confrontation with Jareth at the end.
Moment you've all been waiting for.
Moment you've all been waiting. I certainly have been. This is going to be mostly Tom because this was his baby. My major contribution here was probably when she's blustering and you want him to pat me on the head, you want him to give me candies for a job well done. She totally wants him to pat her on the head and give her candies for a job well done. So she's blustering and using bravado to kind of hide the fact that Jareth's getting to her, which is a very Jareth move.
Yeah.
She's hiding her heart just like Jareth does. So if you were wondering what was going on with that bit where she does that and Jareth gets stronger, it's because he's winning. It's because she's turning away intimacy just like he does. She's making the choices that he makes, and that is actually empowering him. That's not necessarily something that you're going to want to bring in with your own table. You know, you can decide one way or the other, but we wanted to have that in there as kind of a... That's like a mode that Dee is always at risk of falling into because she is so sarcastic.
Also, I really like that part because it's different from the scene in Labyrinth. Like, it really... There's nothing like that. A lot of these are kind of pastiches of scenes in Labyrinth or have their analogs in scenes from Labyrinth. But that's one of the bits that there's nothing like that in Labyrinth.
Yeah, Sarah never sasses him.
Yeah.
Other than calling his Labyrinth a piece of cake.
Or even like in that ending, she doesn't have that like mistake, that regression. In that scene, she's like full self-actualization.
Yes.
You know, just coming at him. And the whole, like, no, we gave Dee that stumble. And so that gives us something new to do with the scene.
Yeah.
So with this scene, it's like, okay, in the intro, he's being a bit more bluster, a bit more trying to overwhelm, overawe. And this has to be the kind of authenticity. Because I adore this scene in Labyrinth.
Yeah,
I
so
think
good.
this is one of the scenes that elevates Labyrinth to like a great movie. It makes Labyrinth a great movie.
Yeah, it's so good.
And part of what I think is amazing about this scene in Labyrinth is the sort of like brutal honesty and the sense of intimacy. And like, they never say in the movie the whole it's his heart, but that feels so right because this scene is so raw and so like honest.
Yeah, it's one of those where as soon as I read in the book, that I said a million times, that the center of the labyrinth is his heart, it's like, oh, of course. Of course it's his heart. And they never say it, but once you know it, you can see it.
And so what's our version of that? What's our version of the brutal honesty? So one of those opening with this question of playing on her insecurities about her relationship with Aslan, because he is trying to sort of say, I'll be your new patron. So that whole, you know, you're scratching for his approval and a few crumbs of his power. Like, if the pitch is, I'll be a newer, better patron, he has to open with, like, here are all these doubts and hesitations you have about this relationship. And, you know, your pawn to be sacrificed for an interesting magic item is hitting the whole, she has that concern about the doll in the Shan Yu. Peddler's Tales was not enough you've listened to. You should. It's really good. And it's important in the meta plot.
It is, yes.
But that hesitation, that uncertainty about his motivation, that kind of harkens back to that. And so the whole, like, he's saying things that are true. And he's saying things that are speaking to her insecurities. And it's the whole, he kind of has to, in this scene, have, like, a point.
Yeah.
Like, what he's saying, this is why it's not a good idea for you to be doing this with Aslan. Like, that has to be real.
Yeah.
And I know you also had there's only one person that Aslan ever loved, and he died a long time ago.
I was so proud of that line. That kicks Aslan in a anatomical region he didn't know he still had.
a big part of this scene where, like, it's basically, I'm gonna clean up the language a little bit. It's basically punching Danny in the throat over and over again. But we're like, it's really fun that he also has that this is the line punching Aslan in the throat. And Aslan's like, oh no, I didn't even know I had a throat. But I don't breathe. Why does it hurt so much?
Yes.
And that idea, you know, that Jareth said, I can be a better patron to you. I can fill this role of, like, older brother. This is like, I came up with that line, like, I can be your older brother, I can be your patron, I can be anything you want me to be. Like, that's getting to the heart of it. It's like boiling it all down to this is what she wants, this
Yes.
authority figure who will protect her and keep her safe. And he's saying, I can be that authority figure. And also I will be, you know, let's really get the subtext out. And I'll be your older brother. Like, that would be a Danny throat punch.
That would be a Danny throat punch. It's like, with Sarah, he's coming at her romantically. Because even if you don't get into all of the backstory stuff that was there in the novelization, she clearly is attracted to Jareth. And he's kind of representing these, like, feelings that she's just starting to be aware of having for boys. So he's coming at her from this very, you know, I'll be your boyfriend point of view. And that's not really something that's there for Dee. Like, Dee has never expressed... Oh, it's, you know... Tom and I were saying when we were trying to figure out how she was going to be reacting to Jareth, I said, you know, honestly, I don't even know what her sexual orientation is. Like, I don't even know if she likes guys. To which Tom's response was...
1986, Goblin King, David Bowie, coming at you full blast. No one's that gay. No one's that straight either.
No.
I mean, dear listener, come on.
So, like, romance is so not on Danny's radar that, like, me, Rachel Kohler, as thirsty as I am, like, I haven't gotten any of that into her yet, because that's just, it's not a thing that registers for her. And it's 1986, Goblin King David Bowie. I'm sure, like, if she were to say there with him, something like that would happen. But that's not the thing she really wants. Sarah really wants a boyfriend. But Danny really wants an older brother.
It's like Sarah, there's sort of the wants to be the fairy tale princess. And with Danny, it's kind of, she always wants to be, like, sort of the little girl trick-or-treating with Max.
Yeah. Oh,
like, that's kind of her.
Yeah.
She keeps orbiting that moment in her life.
I mean, because that was the last time that everything was. That was like when she had her innocence. Like, after that, it was just she knew what a horrible, dangerous place the world was, and there was such a clear before and after point in her life. And she wants to go back to that before. That's,
I really love you had the line that Jareth is much a beautiful predator as the owl whose feathers he wore. That's such a good line.
Thank you.
And even just that whole, like, yes, on one level, there would be a romantic thing. And Jareth would think of this as a romantic relationship. But the whole, no, in the end, it's a kind of consumption. Yeah. In the end, she's going to be a resource he's going to consume.
Yeah. And even, you know, again... Sorry. Even with the beautiful predator, like, that's kind of bringing in the romantic element of her kind of noticing him from that perspective. And because that's not the perspective that she's most interested in, that's kind of when she's like, stepping back and having some distance. Because girls his age know better, as Olivia Rodrigo would say. So yeah, I'm pretty sure that's everything.
Power over me.
Power over me. Power over me.
This was also a tricky bit, was like her dialogue.
Yeah.
Because you have Jareth is coming at her with dropping truth bombs, but she's doing the play. She's doing the lines.
Yeah.
So it's like, we kind of have to do this scene in a different way. So that was also a tricky thing that you were going to need. So I assume one of your PCs are reading a play called The Labyrinth.
Yes.
That gives them a final monologue about the Goblin King.
Yeah. So when you're coming at this with your players as a GM, again, just finding that just Jareth throat punching the PC. Have so much fun with that. I know how fun that is as a GM. It's so fun. Enjoy.
This is this scene. You're like, he's in their memories. He's in their hopes and wishes and desires, and just throat punches. No throat left unpunched. Like, he's going right for the jugular. Completely gloves off.
I've run the gentleman collar. I know how fun this is. And then Aslan comes in and does his response. And I just real quick want to say, listeners, it says something about what a mark I am that I read his response and was like, oh, that's sweet.
Wait, no.
I did not pick up on the levels on which he's just playing her like a fiddle until Aslan, the person who writes Aslan's dialogue, not, the fictional character, like kind of walked me through. I was like, no, here's what he's doing here. I was like, oh, okay. I should probably not send money to that Nigerian prince. All right.
Enclosed, you will find candy. Please imagine me patting you on the head as you eat it.
I love you so much.
Like, he completely gets what this is revealing. And he's like, I also get, I need to, delicate touch it here. I need to delicately pat her on the head as per her desire, per her stated desire.
As Aslan even did point out the whole thing, there is a little bit of authenticity here, because Aslan does, the people who can get in any way close to him at all are the people who remind him of the only person he's ever loved, his chaotic good son. So, there's
Vanessa, his Dr.
Doofenshmirtz
to call back to our last episode.
So there's not nearly as much affection as he's pretending here, but there is a little bit of a something, and that's part of what makes this relationship so juicy.
Yes.
If you were just making up the whole thing, it wouldn't be nearly this fun.
Yeah.
And so, I think that's pretty much it for Labyrinth. Thank you all so much for listening. I know this was a longer commentary than usual, but
hopefully funny banter.
This is almost like the more options for the natives of Neverland of Labyrinth. This is almost like...
more options for the labyrinths of Labyrinth.
Yes, this is almost like, deleted material from the episode, but we really felt like it was important to give you guys concrete examples so that, again, it wasn't like, this is a great adventure and I'll make the adventure.
Yeah.
So, we will see you in a month for Thanos. Thank you so much for listening, and happy gaming. This has been The Wonderful World of Darklords. We have no affiliation with Disney or Wizards of the Coast. All music recordings used in this episode are in the public domain and were obtained through museopen.org. Titles and links are in the show notes. Dialogue for Yensid was written by Aslan Rex himself, who you can follow on Tumblr at darklordaslan. The Wonderful World of Darklords logo was designed by Haylight Jones. You can find links to their work in the show notes. If you'd like to support the show, look for us on patreon.com or find our tip jar on Red Circle. Thanks for listening.